for the second time in a generation, is the Mecca of peacemakers. As after the First World War, so now are the political leaders of the nations assembled in the French capital to frame the peace treaties. Owing to Ernest Bevins' illness, the British delegation, which includes A.V. Alexander, is led by the Prime Minister. Mr. Attlee's diplomatic gifts now find their greatest scope. Mr. Mackenzie presents the senior Dominion at the Luxembourg Palace, stage of the conference. French Premier Bido, head of the host nation, presided at the opening. Mr. Burns led the American representatives. Molotov, well bodyguarded as usual, leads for Russia. The conference chamber of the French Senate was packed with the delegates and their secretaries as the hour approached for the inaugural session. There was no mood of undue optimism in view of the experience at UNO and the foreign ministers' conferences earlier in the year. It was to a calm assembly that the French Premier declared the peace conference open.
Messieurs, je déclare ouverte la conférence de Paris.
Cars dating back to the brave days of old, when a motorist had to have the spirit of an explorer, made a bravery appearance at the jubilee of the automobile industry. The 71-year-old Grenville Steam Coach was the veteran of the show, but there were several representatives of the early 1900s and naughty 90s, all still going strong. Strong enough to chug from Regent's Park round the West End and back again. Motorbus veteran of the First World War had an honored place in the cavalcade. It went from the streets of London to the front in 1914. Winding up the show came the cars of today, now modestly trickling off the production lines and available for export, and for folks here with 800 or 900 pounds, or a few thousand. So let's keep hoping.
The King held another investiture when he conferred honors on over 250 men and women at Buckingham Palace. Men from many walks of civil life and from the services were recipients of various decorations. Mr. Hector Macbeal, Lord Provost of Glasgow, received a knighthood for distinguished service to the state. Another bushfire ravaged the slopes of Table Mountain. Sweeping on their relentless way, the flames roared through the countryside for 10 hours, doing enormous damage. The task of the firefighters was made more difficult by the frequent changes of wind. A blackened mass extended over a wide area from the historic glen to high up the slope, and for miles along the face of Table Mountain itself. A delegation of British members of Parliament paid a visit to Prague, where they saw for themselves how MPs of the latest people's democracy tackle problems of the day. From Prague, the party journeyed to a famous spa, where they interviewed Germans at one of the expatriation camps. The British visitors remained for some time in Czechoslovakia, studying conditions of life in a country whose political work has aroused interest all over the world. Colorful ceremony in British Columbia, as Scottish contingents marched past on the occasion of the visit of the Governor-General to Vancouver. Viscount Alexander became the first white man to be made a chief of the Coast Indians, as he donned the tribal headdress and robe, thus becoming a fully fledged Indian chief. In the great northwest wheat belt around Washington, the golden sheaves of a record harvest from America's immense granary provided the much-needed food for millions of hungry men and women. 10,100,000 tons was the target aimed at, But this bumper season has exceeded the goal by 30,000 tons, a magnificent contribution to the needs of a shattered world. After a bomb explosion caused by terrorists on the British headquarters at Jerusalem, one entire corner of the King David Hotel, a building of 7 stories, was razed to the ground. The stone floors were cut clean away as if they'd been hit by a 1,000-pound bomb from above. Housed in the destroyed wing were the greater part of the government offices where work was in full swing at the time of the outrage. Men of the army and the police were working with cranes, bulldozers, drills, and shovels to reach the unfortunate victims still buried in the wreckage. The latest casualty list included 65 killed, 47 injured, and 58 missing. Though it is doubtful if any of those missing are still alive. Once more, the civilized world has received a rude shock at the hands of fanatics whose wanton act is contrary to the dictates of all creeds alike and imperils the best interests of the cause that it strives to promote.
Her Majesty the Queen opened a new wing at the Queen Victoria Hospital, East Grinstead, a famous war centre for plastic surgery. Many former patients were present for Her Majesty's speech of dedication.
I am very glad to be here today to open this surgical block which has been so generously given by the British War Relief Society of America. It constitutes a fresh example of the happy collaboration which during the past 6 years has brought our two peoples into a closer union than ever before.
The door is opened and Her Majesty sees for herself the new equipment to continue the magnificent work of healing the wounds of those who sacrificed so much in war. Racing returns again to an ideal English setting, living well up to its title of Glorious Goodwood. As always, plenty of turf enthusiasts came to the course from many miles around, and fortunately the weather was kind. Around the paddock go the runners for the day's big race, the Stewards' Cup, in which Royal Charger was the 3-1 favorite. All set now, and they're off to a flying start along 6 famous furlongs. Coming up now to the finish. A tough battle, and then Commissar leaps into first place, with Royal Charger second and Fortress a third in the Stewards' Cup of 1946.